Hey everyone, I am MSK, aka Master Swag King, coming at you guys today with another video. And in today's video, I am going to be giving you guys my LCK 2024 Spring Split Team Tier List. So I know a lot of you liked when I uploaded my LEC 2024 Winter Split Team Tier List. Now, I really enjoyed what I did in that video, thought it came out great. But I did something in that video that I'm not going to end up doing moving forward when it comes to these, team tier lists, actually. So when I go and rank the teams, the tiers are no longer going to be structured by numbers. So I had it in the last video where it was 8th to 10th, 7th to 9th, 2nd through 4th, and 1st, right? I think, given the parity with some of these like really, really bad, like teams like Nongshim and Fredit Brion and all these other like really, really garbage teams, for the most part, they're going to be around 7th to 10th anyway. So that would mostly equal to them being like C and D tier anyway. And I think that's a lot more easier to follow for all of you that are going to be listening to this video, whether you're like, commuting back and forth from work, going to the gym or whatever, right? So let's talk about a few things before I start ranking the teams for my LCK 2024 Spring Split. So, Live Sandbox rebrands as Fear X. So, in my LEC video that I just recently did, there was a lot of changes regarding like, teams dissolving their partnerships or getting like name rebrands. But for the LCK, you literally just have Live Sandbox, who was originally named Sandbox Gaming, who entered the LCK the same time as, Damwon Gaming, actually, who is now, D plus Kia. They're going to be called Fear X. I really don't know what is this obsession with like X, when Elon Musk bought Twitter, now it's called X. XL merged with Giants and their name is now Giant X. And then now you have Live Sandbox rebranding as Fear X. Like, are these guys like all in cahoots with something with the letter X? Is X supposed to mean something like maybe it just means like X marks the spot or something like that, right? I just find this fascination with X recently to be really, really odd, but also weird at the same time. But nevertheless, T1 ended up winning the 2023 League of Legends World Championship. Faker finally got his 4th Worlds title, pretty much cementing himself as the greatest League of Legends player of all time. I mean, no one's catching that anytime soon. Obviously, there's other players you could debate there as who is the greatest League of Legends player of all time. But for the most part, Faker is going to be that for a lot of people. Now, I want to make sure I put something into perspective before we actually start going and ranking the teams. That being the fact that the LCK in the quality of League of Legends has, I would say, massively dipped over the course of a good amount of these years. Now, there's many factors to that. The first one being the fact that a lot of these other more bottom tier LCK orgs, they don't make money at all, really. I mean, the CEO of Gen G, Arnold, went on to Last Free Nation with the Monty and Wolf show and basically talked about all the problems that, just the LCK is having in terms of like actually having orgs end up being profitable. Right. So it kind of begs you the question of like, who is a profitable org in the LCK? Remember, like the LCK and the LPO viewership is insane. So it's hard to really believe, what's really the issue to why they're not profitable. Well, it's not really about viewership. It's more like there's a lot of like layers to pull back in that onion, because starting with like Gen G, Arnold mentioned that, despite leading the league in sponsorships, they've not turned a profit. Like, because player salaries are a lot of money, actually, like what can you really do as an esport org to have a consistent revenue stream that you can have besides sponsorships? Basically the league just lives and dies off ads or advertisements and sponsorships because, esport fans can be very, entitled and think that they are just entitled to basically free entertainment. And the mere fact that you would even suggest that someone would pay for this product, like you just are the worst person ever. And, so either fans could eventually put some money up, or we're just going to have orgs basically dissolve and have to just constantly rely on sponsorships. Now, all the money these orgs get from sponsorships goes to paying the players, and they make a good amount of the money out of the league. So you got to factor in for, orgs like Nong Shit Red Force, Kwangdong Ching Chong Freaks, whatever Fredit Breon wants to be, DRX, FearX, these guys aren't going to be shelling out top dollar for the best talent. They know they're not competing with T1, KT, Gen G, D Plus Kia, or Hama Life. They know they're not competing with them, especially not in terms of like money. They probably have even less money than most of these guys. Anyway, I get some of these guys are like naming sponsors too. Some of them actually have pretty good backing, but even with that good backing, they're still not shelling out good money for a lot of these players. And that's the thing though, in the LCK and the LPL, you really don't have to shell out that much for like top tier talent, in the sense of like you could potentially find like diamonds in the rough a lot more easily than you would be able to have that happen to you for like trying to build a team in the LCS or the LEC actually, right? But the LCK has been very top heavy for the most part. I mean, you look at all the orgs that have ever won, it's mostly been, well, T1, because Faker has 10 titles. I mean, you have D Plus Kia, who has 3. Gen G now have 3. And then KT has had 1. Well, KT has won 2. One was back in like OGN. And then obviously they won one back in 2018. So for the then obviously Hama Life, who was at one point Rocks Tigers, they bought that spot. Back in the day, Rocks Tigers won. And then obviously at DRX, when they were, was it Longju? Yeah, it was Longju or Kingzone Dragon X. They won some titles too. So for the most part, these other bottom orgs, if they want to basically do the whole SK Gaming approach, where they're basically just grabbing random underrated talent and getting a really nice superstar out of that, I mean, that's a lot more cost effective and a lot more better on saving money and then utilizing that sponsorship money for other things in your org than potentially spending like top dollar only to end up losing to T1 because Faker just has this like aura around him where the T1 players look like complete garbage if he's not there. But if he's there, oh my God, these guys look like the best players in the world. So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the LCK. And when you're talking about the LCK, what I want to point out here is, yes, the LCK won Worlds in 2023, right? Well, T1 won Worlds, to be more precise. T1 defeated all the LPL teams. They beat BLG 2-0, actually, right? They defeated LNG 3-0. They beat JDG, the team that was supposed to win the World Championship, 3-1. And they also defeated Weibo Gaming 3-0 as well. Now, Weibo were a complete fraud team, and they were not a team that should have even made the finals. BLG horrendously choked against them, but nevertheless, T1 ended up going 13-1 against the top 4 LPL teams. And then you also had Gen G, who basically, beat and consistently could beat T1, but whenever they face up against LPL teams, the play styles against like the LPL teams were way, way stronger than what they were able to actually fight off against, namely just BLG. BLG's playstyle completely just obliterated Gen G's in a way that I really never seen, honestly. But BLG were an extremely strong team, and I'm glad they're keeping most of their core roster, and they're going to be upgrading tonight, actually. So, and we're also looking at, the LCK teams. There's one on here that's going to be like the bare minimum. The rest of them are going to be pretty much like whatever trash anyway. And people are going to be like, well, what about DRX? They won the 2022 League of Legends World Championship. Well, let's be honest here, man. The year that they won Worlds, I'm not going to say it was luck because they did actually beat some pretty good teams to get to where they needed to get to. But they were really trash, honestly. And then if people have watched the LCK last year, the bottom tier teams in the LCK have been horrendous, actually. Like, they had literally the worst win-loss record like ever for a year when it comes to like bottom tier teams. I forgot the actual record, but it was really bad. So these org owners and GMs are not going to be spending top dollar for big name talent. They're just not going to do it, right? Because even Arnold said you could actually make some decent money not being a top tier team. You're not, spending all your money in salaries, right? So let's start with the bottom tier teams that no one's going to care about. No one's going to even really bat an eye for, but it's the LCK. So you'll watch. And I really don't know why the LCK opening up the split is starting out with, I think it's like Nong Shim versus like who's fighting? It's Nongshin versus like DRX or something. Yeah. And then you have the match of the week, which is Gen G versus T1. But let's be honest here. So people are gonna ask why would they do that? So viewership mostly ticks up the later on the night goes. So you could throw out your shitter match at the beginning part of the broadcast and then have your banger one right after that, okay? So let's go over some of these rosters. So let's hit show rosters, and we're going to start with Nongshin Red Forest. The roster is going to be Din Din, Sylvie, Fiesta, or a combination of Call Me. So we'll have to see who's going to end up with the starting spot or whoever they're going to start, tonight. At the time of me recording this video, Jiwoo and Peter. And yeah, that's their roster. Yeah, looking like hot D tier, All right, there's nothing to say here. This roster looks like trash, honestly. All right, we'll do. I know people like DRX for some cringe reason, and the reason that you would even like DRX is because of Beryl. And Beryl was on there last year, and Beryl was terrible himself. And DRX doesn't even have Beryl anymore. Let's do Fear X. So you have Clear, Willer, Closer, Hina, Execute, right? So they had a Closer last year. Fear X actually wanted JoJo Peon over Closer. Closer wasn't even supposed to be even on a roster, honestly. So last minute, JoJo just decided, hey, I'm just going to stay in North America and play on Cloud9. But if we're being honest here, this roster is terrible. I'm sorry to Ryu, still getting killed by Faker Zed. He just really doesn't know what he's doing as a coach, honestly. These players are not good. I mean, Closer, I think, still has some potential, but hasn't been able to really show it. Willer's an awful jungler, honestly. This is also looking like hot D tier. There you go. All right, who's another feeder dog shitter org? All right, we have Ching Chong Freaks. We have Doodoo, Cuz, Young Jay, so maybe they'll be having them swap time. Bulldog, Taeyun, and Deal. So Taeyun, if this is the ADC they had last year, he had some pop-off games when he was playing like Nyla. He had some agency. Bulldog's been a pretty hyped mid laner. Showed some promise, but honestly. Cuz, longtime LCK jungler. He's won titles. He's been to Worlds. He was just on KT Rolster last year, if you guys remember him. And somehow he ended up on Kwangdong Freaks. Yeah, I feel so bad for this guy. But maybe him being on Kwangdong Freaks, if he has a really good performance this year on Kwangdong Freaks, it could show people, hey, this guy's really got some chops and he should be on a competitive roster. But if looking at Ching Chong Freaks, yeah, you're going to be at hot D tier. There you go. There's no way Cuz is going to be pulling these guys out of the fire. There's no way. He's not that kind of player. All right, who else is next? We have OK Breon. So you have Lord Morgan, Gideon, Karis, Envy, Effort. This is basically just a place just washed up rejects, honestly. Effort used to be on T1. He actually won titles. He's been to MSI. He's been to Worlds, but, he wasn't really as good as people would probably remember. He was getting carried a lot by Teddy. He's been basically just a really shit player after he left T1. Morgan is just trash. Like, whenever I watch any roster, Akaris, there was a few Lissandra games I saw of this guy where I was like, oh, okay, he's got some chops, but for the most part, it's just an awful roster. Looking like, hot D tier. All these guys are competing between like 7th to 10th, if we're being honest here. Nothing they do matters right here. All these are dog shit rosters, right? So, let's do DRX, actually. DRX. Their roster is Rascal, who used to be on Gen G, Sponge, C-Tab, Teddy, who also used to be on T1. Actually, he also won titles himself. Really talented ADC still. And Pleta. Yeah, Rascal is not the player that people think he is. Or they thought he was. A name like Sponge is going to be the best or the worst name, depending on how the year for DRX goes. If we're looking at just DRX's year last year, there's no hope for this roster either, at all. Like, legitimately at all. Like, unless Teddy has some monster 1v9 performances like he used to do back on Jin there's really nothing else he can do. Feel sorry for my boy Teddy, but you know what? Looking like what? Hot D tier. All these fucking rosters look like complete trash. Now, my opinion could change on all these orgs going into summer, but right now, from looking at these players, there's like a few decent no-name quantities there, but nothing that I'm thinking like massive pop-off games, the star power that's not there. These are looking like some rookie Ross, like a mixture of like rookies in there as well. So they're gonna have to get acclimated to the stage. And so have you guys have noticed that it's really hard for like some of these orgs to actually do well with all the new changes from what we just saw in the LEC. So with what we just saw in the LEC, there's so many new changes. I doubt all these new rookies are going to be going on stage and completely like, having a time of their life on stage. Actually, sorry about that. There's a big giant truck outside. People just want to rev their engines or whatever. But basically, all these teams suck, honestly. All right. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. All right, let's do... You know what? I'm saving my boys Gen.G and T1 for last. And we're going to do this right here, okay? So these guys, I'll have this right there. And we'll do D plus Kia. So D plus Kia's roster is Kingen, Flaccid, Showmaker, Aiming, Kellen. So D plus Kia, obviously the combination of Showmaker and Canyon is gone. They had one of the highest win percentages for a jungle mid duo ever. Obviously, very clearly talented mid jungle duo. This is the first year since they began their LCK careers as pro players to the point where they're not. This is the first year ever they're not going to be on the same team. That's crazy to think about. These guys have even won worlds together, right? But if you look at D plus Kia last year, the roster with Deft, Kellen, Showmaker, Canyon, and what's his name? Kana. Really bad roster. Playstyles did not match up very well. The meta, it wasn't really even just like the meta, just the playstyles were just so non-complementary. And then if we're going to start here, why would you keep Kellen? He's an awful player. He's garbage. He's straight bad. How in the world has he managed to stay on this roster as long as he has? I don't get it. I legit don't get it. He's an awful support. Then you have Aiming, who you guys remember was on KT roster. He's a really good ADC, really talented ADC. I really like Aiming, but we saw what Def can do. Like, even Def couldn't carry freaking Kellen. Am I supposed to think Aiming could? Could be different. Maybe Aiming synergizes better with Kellen than Def did. Maybe. I fully understand that. But I don't see it very well. And, sometimes a really good ADC can basically transcend the bot lane. But people don't understand, when you have a really bad support against other really top-tier talented supports on other good teams, he is going to let you get... He is not going to be able to be that difference maker. He's not a very good roamer. His champion, it's not about champion. His laning skills suck. His warding timings are terrible. He roams like crap. He doesn't synergize very well with any of his teammates. He's just an awful player. I don't know why he's on this roster. He should be on the fucking bench eating some fucking cup of noodles, honestly, or some top ramen. Such a trash fucking support. I don't even understand why he's on a roster, honestly. So Showmaker, I mean, if they're not going to get rid of Showmaker after having a really bad year, which is in 2023, then he's staying here forever. Honestly, he even mentioned before he's gonna end up basically being here until he retires. He had that tweet of like, well, there's really no D plus Kia Damn One Gaming without Showmaker. And I like Showmaker. I think he's been arguably, if not better than Chovy throughout their League of Legends careers. Actually, he's won worlds. He can really be that difference maker on a team. Extremely talented, but last year was just not his year. I know he talked about burnout and all that other stuff as well. So when we're looking at just basically what is the Showmaker we're going to see coming into this year? Are we going to see a revitalized Showmaker where he's making the big plays and carrying games and winning you games just based off his pure mechanical prowess alone? I don't know, honestly. I mean, we could be at the point in Showmaker's career now where he's just going to end up being not a good mid laner. Very much well could be the case, because, I mean, he didn't play really good at all last year, like at all. There's not even really standout games I can remember from this guy last year. He was literally just running it for all of last year. This is a player at one point who's won Worlds final finishes, was one game away from winning his second World Championship. So you can tell this guy is talented. It's just, you just have those years as a pro player where your mind's just not really in it, and that year was just not his year. honestly. So that's my concern is like, basically, since he kind of ran it down as hard as he did, why are you really taking the chance on him again? I mean, I get it. Everyone has like that one bad year in their career. I get it. And you should not be just basically judged off that. But that's a bad year. You got to question and be like, bro, you need to really step up that performance. I better see this guy at the same level he was at back in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. Because if it's 2023 Showmaker, D plus Key are going to be right at the same place that they were at last year, which is basically, I don't know, borderline, only middle of the pack and a little bit better because the rest of the teams are just so bad, right? I don't know anything about Lucid, Flaccid. I don't care, honestly. Kingen is trash. Nah, I'm not fucking with you guys. But Kingen obviously is a player who was trash, actually, back in 2022. He has never really been good, like, ever, honestly. He's only been ever good, like, in very few instances. One of those instances caused him to win a world championship. But if you watched Hanwha Life last year, you would know just how bad Kingen really was. He was dog shit. He was bad. He was trash. And I don't know why him playing that bad, Net and D plus Kia went like, oh man, good sir, I would love to have you on my roster. Like, what the fuck? Such stupid shit out of some of these like LCK freaking team managers to go like, why? I just don't get it. And you look at one of their coaches right there, Song. I mean, he's been, or arguably, if you look at his career, there's a lot of good there, but there's also a lot of like, he's made a lot of bad decisions too. Song comes off of the FlyQuest year back in the LCS, and that was not good from him either. So I don't know who really constructed this roster. Maybe this roster worked very good in maybe like some test scrims. I have no clue. But it basically comes down to, can aiming have monster games on a consistent level? Can Showmaker get back to his original form or somewhat of that original form? Because if none of those things happen, they're about to finish like where they finished last year. And that's kind of why I had them at C tier. They're going to be pretty much just that gatekeeper team to all of these. But I don't think they'll have enough to punch them above them, honestly. All right, so let's move on to the next team. And that is, people like the Telecom Wars, so we'll do that. Next one. We'll do Hanwha Life Esports, right? Hanwha Life Esports, an org that basically could spend very little money or a lot of money and still fail. Somewhat of the effect like Team Vitality, right? Where basically they could do so much, end up with nothing, and do so little and end up even worse. I legit don't get it from some of these like, orgs actually, right? So this is kind of where I'm at with Hanwha Life. So Hanwha Life's roster is Doran, Peanut, Zeka, Viper, and Delight, right? Okay, so Delight was one of, if not the best support in the LCK, along with Carrier and along with Lahens, right? Delight, cracked player on playmaking supports, and the meta right now is more or less so trending to ranged and playmaking supports, give or take, the actual comp you're going with. But such a talented player, I couldn't see a reason why he wouldn't end up on a roster, actually, right? After his performance on Genji last year, I mean, he was definitely probably one of the most sought-out prospects in the offseason, right? Such a crack support, very talented, awesome pickup for Hanwha Life Esports, right? Better than that other guy who was like, what, Life? Life is... It's crazy how Rascal and Life only played well on Genji, and when they left, people just saw how big of frauds they actually were, right? So Viper, obviously one of the best ADCs in the world, one of the best LCK ADCs. This guy is so talented. He was literally winning games for Hanwha Life on his own last year, but his team was so dysfunctionally bad, he couldn't make it happen. So now, when you look at the top side he has now, Zeka, I'll say this. Zeka, just like with Kingen, did not have a good year last year at all, really. He never even really stood out in any games. And I have no real reason why they chose to keep Zeka, despite him playing just as bad as Kingen, if not worse in most cases, too. So maybe they're thinking, hey, if we just kind of switch it up and give him a player like Peanut who can add that additional macro sense to their gameplay, it's going to be a lot more better for them. And you're looking at Peanut and you're going, okay, Peanut has the macro sense. He has his very few champions. He does play well very now. He's not the same Peanut he was back in the day. He was a monster animal and carry champions, but he's a very good player at knowing where to be on the map, what lane to pressure, and what to actually do on the map in effective situations. Now, the reason Peanut has failed internationally is because there are players with the qualities that I just mentioned, but there are players that are stronger than him at other things that you have to be stronger at, right? So Peanut definitely, I think, deserves to be on an LCK roster. The problem here is you're adding in Doran, and yeah, Doran played better than Kingen, and I think Doran also deserves to be on a spot on an LCK team. Doran has the same downsides as someone like Kingen, but the upsides are a lot more consistent, if that makes sense, right? So I think adding in the Genji support and top side, you bring a lot of stabilization to the Homolife roster, the Homolife esports roster, and I think they're going to be actually stronger because of it, right? And if you factor in, someone like Doran won't take the carry top laner. He'll take the Gragas, right? He'll take the weak side options, right? Someone like Peanut, he won't need to play a carry jungler. He could take the Sejuani. He could take the Vi. He could switch it up, right? Will he be as strong on these champions as other people potentially mechanically? No, but he'll know what to do on the map more effectively than them, and that's going to be the difference maker there, right? Zeka, I mean, looking at how the meta is now, it's going to be basically what is Azir, Orianna, Nico, so depending on how strong he is on those champions, we'll see how strong Homolife actually is. The ADCs right now are what? Aphelios, fucking hell. Good lord. Aphelios, there's Ashe support. So Delight will definitely be pretty cracked on that. There's a pretty good range of like carry champions in all the roles now due to all the changes. So Viper, let's be honest here, he's one of the best ACs in the world. He can play literally anything and actually carry very, very sufficiently on it, right? So I mean, well, we also have Varus is in the meta, and there's Lucian, right? So, I mean, those are definitely champions up his ballpark. I mean, if they want this guy to even play utility, this guy could play Jhin. So, yeah, I do think the addition of the Genji players is going to bring much needed stabilization to this roster, and I think that's why this year they'll be better off than last year. This looks like a roster that is constructed with the mindset of like, let's show up our weaknesses, but then let's not have our weaknesses be as weak because we're going to keep our strong pieces actually. This is what I would probably call a good constructed roster, right? Last year, they had no jungle direction because Clid and the other guy were just so trash. Peanut is a direction. They needed a top laner who who could basically have a mixture of carries and weak side, right? But be good doing it both. Doran can be a mixture of that, give or take, right? And then you have Delight, a pretty good support, who played with Peanut, has synergized very well with him, and then that'll be your jungle mid duo right there. And they have a strong ADC, and if not a stronger ADC with Viper than Pays, actually, right? So Homolife, for me, going to be in B tier. This should be almost definitively the fourth best team, give or take. They might even reach as high as third, potentially second if they play their cards right, honestly. All right, so let's go to KT Roster. All right, so they have Perfect, Sick, BDD, Deft, and Barrel. So just kind of like with the Homolife roster, where they took the Genji players and added them in, KT Roster is doing that in another way, where they've taken 3 of the DRX players that won Worlds, and they're adding them to their roster. Now, fun fact, Deft actually used to play for KT Roster back in 2018, and that was actually the last time they actually won a title in summer of 2018, but Deft actually began playing on KT Roster back during the LCK 2017 spring split. He was on there for 2 years. Went to Worlds, top 8. You guys know the IG, KT, best of 5, all that stuff, right? So, KT, I don't know who Perfect really is, honestly. I don't see a world where you would want to get rid of Keen, honestly. Like, Keen is very talented. Like, Keen has some issues when showing up to, like, big matches. But if you're looking at just the talent that Keen has, there's no way this new guy is better than him. But look, they're taking a chance on him, right? If we're looking at Cuz and PO6 performances at Worlds, because let's be honest, that's what they're judging this off of. Pielsa got a really good Worlds performance though, so I think if you can make the argument, he could deserve to be here. Honestly, he played very well at Worlds. He just didn't have a team to basically help him out at all. Honestly, right? BDD top 3 mid laner in the LCK. Nothing needs to be said there. He definitely proved he should be on the roster after his World performance. He was an absolute animal at the World Championship. You know, I don't really know if they wanted Deft as their first option for KT Rolster, but, you know, if he's going to be playing with Beryl, well, you have some synergy there. And if you pair up with Piosic, oh, okay, that's where you kind of need to maybe have those weaknesses short up. The big problem here, honestly, is if we're looking at this roster, I think this roster is going to be that consistently inconsistent roster that KT Rolster has always been for their organization's history forever, honestly. If you guys have been watching KT Rolster as long as I have, I've watched this since 2015 for the LCK. This org's always been inconsistently consistent. Yeah, Piosic for Cuz is mostly a side grade. Deft for aiming is definitely a downgrade when you're looking at the performances of both players. Beryl for freaking Lehens is if you're looking at just from a macro point of view, it's an upgrade. But if you're looking at it from a mechanical point of view, it's a downgrade, right? I just don't know how Beryl ends up on these teams constantly. But it must have been Piosic and Deft wanting to get Beryl back and having that good sense of macro, because Beryl does have a great sense of macro. Just, you know, the laning phase can be either the thing that wins you the game or loses you the game, depending on how good or bad that goes. I would have KT Rolster. I would probably have him in beats here. Honestly, I think Homolife is just going to be a little bit more better. I think the players are just stronger on this roster, pound for pound, and these ones are going to be this one has more highs, could have, you know, lower lows. This one is going to be, I would say, Mr. Consistent, but with lesser highs. Honestly, that makes sense. Then you get to my boys, Gen G. My boys. So if you guys don't know the story about Gen G, I'll tell you guys, okay? So originally, Samsung White won Worlds in 2014, okay? So then, later on, I didn't follow Samsung in 2015. In 2016, they rebranded to, like, Samsung Galaxy, I think, actually. So then, I liked the name, I liked the logo, and I liked watching their games. This was when they had Crown, Ambition, Cuvée, Wraith, Core JJ. Originally, it was Wraith as the support, not Core JJ. Later on, Core JJ role swapped to support, and then that's when they brought in Ruler, actually, and then Samsung Galaxy that same year in 2016 when I was rooting for them. They went all the way to Worlds Finals, only to lose the very last game to SK Telecom T1 in the first ever best of 5 at the World Championship Finals for League of Legends, actually. Then the next year, they had a rematch against SK Telecom T1, and they 3-0'd them. Then after that, they rebranded to KSV for the LCK 2018 Spring Split. Then the Summer Split, they officially rebranded again to be called Gen G, and I like the Gen G branding more because I think KSV was a terrible name, actually. Then from there on out, you guys could probably know what I'm going to say next. 2018, the group stage was a disaster, obviously. It was crazy. That's the only year where I had like 3 teams. No. Yeah, that might have been the only year in the World Championship where I had 3 of the orgs I support in the same group. You guys know I like RNG, Cloud9, and Gen G. They were all in the same group, man. Crazy. There's been other examples of it too, but like that one was ridiculous, right? So then Gen G didn't go to the Worlds in 2019. They ended up back at Worlds in 2020. They lost to G2. That super team G2 won quarterfinals 3-0. 2021, they managed to basically fall to EDG. 1 game from getting to the World Finals that year. 2022, they should have made the finals, but, you know, typical Chovy choking when it matters against DRX, right? And then you guys saw me support Gen G obviously heavily this year. I thought they had one of the best rosters in the world, and just it's a combination of like nerves and choking, could play in bad meta reads, actually, and you get to the point now where you have this roster. So you have Keen, Canyon, Chovy, Pays, Lehens. So Keen coming over from KT. I think Keen is an upgrade over Doran, but it just depends on the way you want to use him, right? Massive carry player right here. And he can definitely, if there's a carry oriented, top lane meta, which it is right now with Aatrox, Jax, Renekton, champions like that, he can definitely thrive very well. I mean, if there's a Rumble meta, oh my God, Keen is ripping people apart, obviously. Canyon, just like what I said with Showmaker, he's going to have to prove himself this year. Like, because he had a really bad year. Just like with Showmaker, it was like legit their first worst year ever in their careers, in my own personal opinion. Kenyon's been one of the best junglers in the world for a very, very long time. So I'm curious to see how is Canyon going to synergize with Chovy, right? Because that mid jungle synergy is really, really valuable, to these like top Asian teams in the LPL and the LCK. And I don't know if Canyon's playstyle complements Chovy, because remember, Peanut did a lot of the work for Gen G when he was on there with the macro that he was applying to the team with his game knowledge, right? You could have a world where like both of your main components of your team don't talk to each other. I mean, we've seen comms from these guys. Canyon, I wouldn't say is mute, but doesn't speak as much. Chovy's almost pure mute, actually. And if we're looking at Chovy, obviously best LCK mid laner, he can beat Faker, he can beat BD, he can beat everybody, right? But the problem here is his synergy with Canyon going to be the thing that hinders Gen G? Or if it's really good, it makes him even way better, in my opinion, personally, right? Pays, obviously, talented ADC, deserves to keep his spot from Gen G, was not even close to an issue with Gen G last year at all. I would say slight underperformances on his part, but for the most part, he's really, really talented. Great ADC picker for them. Someone that they brought up, actually, from their academy team, if I'm not too mistaken about that. And then Lehens comes back to Gen G, right? Because like with Keen, both Keen and Lehens were on KT, and now they're on Gen G, which is really odd. We've had this combination of like Gen G, KT, and Humble Life basically just swapping players, actually. But yeah, Lehens didn't play well at the 2023 World Championship, but I do think he played well in the LCK overall. Very talented support there. I'm curious to see like how are these players really going to synergize with their counterparts, right? So how's the mid jungle synergy going to be with Canyon and Lehens? How's the mid support synergy between Chovy and Lehens? And the Gen G players, you can see it right now. You can see how the roster was constructed. You can see just how good these players can be. You can see at their high highs. It could be a destructively, really scary team. But if these players don't work out, oh, we could be in for a world of just not good, honestly, right? Do I hope that happens? No. But could it be a possibility? Yes, honestly. But if you're looking just off players alone, Gen G, for me, are going to be the only team in A tier. And last but not least, the team that I think is going to win the LCK 2024 Spring Split is none other than SK Telecom T1. Now, do I think it'll be a Gen G T1 Finals? I do think that. Give or take, how the split might go and given how the bracket might shape up. So for anyone who's wondering, T1 kept the same roster. The one that they won Worlds with in 2023 is the same roster, okay? So the question here right now is, because T1 has always had insane performances in the regular season. It's very rare they have a regular season be bad. I think the last regular season they had was bad was, I can't remember. One in like 2021 where they were like constantly swapping out players for some stupid reason. And then back in like maybe 2016 spring split for the LCK. But if you're looking at it for the most time in, T1's history, or SK Telecom T1, most people would say, with Faker, he's been the constant factor of them. They very rarely have bad regular seasons. Even if they're not like first place sometimes, they're right there at second place, neck and neck with the other team. And this team has put up some impressive regular season records of all time in the LCK, right? They've changed no players. They're even getting a massive upgrade. So you guys remember that head coach that Faker had in his career when he won his first 3 world championships, Coma? Yeah, that guy's coming back, So both Faker and Coma have been apart from each other for quite some time. Both have succeeded without each other. So there's not that like, oh, well, I succeeded without you. You didn't succeed without me. No, they both succeeded without each other. They both won titles, away from each other at the highest level as well. I mean, Zeus, one of the best top laners. Owner, if he's on his game, is easily one of the best junglers, obviously. He was definitely revitalized at the 2023 World Championship. Faker, he's going to arguably be like the third best mid laner compared to players like BDD and Chovy, and this is also going to be comparable with Showmaker, give or take what form Showmaker comes in as well, right? Because we see Keria, one of the best bot lanes in the LCK, and I think the addition of Coma is going to make them even stronger, right? So will it be a disappointment if Team 1 does not win the LCK 2024 Spring Split? Yes, it definitely will be a disappointment because not only did they keep up the players, they just won the previous World Championship. Given how most of these orgs have changed massively in terms of players and swapping out 3-4 players, yeah, they should be the front runner to win the split. Guys, I love Gen G. You guys know how much I love Gen G. But I mean, it's going to be a toss-up to see like if they're going to be able to compete with Team 1. I think Team 1 is going to be putting up like a 16-2 match record with this roster. You know, just this roster is just so good when they're on. You can't deny that. But, you know, they have played bad here and there. But for the most part, if we're looking at like their regular season, we've seen Keria fucking pull out Caitlyn's support. This guy's just an animal, man. Might be one of the best supports in LCK history. If you're looking at just like pure mechanical skill alone, right? So what do you guys think about my LCK 2024 Spring Split Team Tier List? Do you guys think Team 1 is going to win the LCK 2024 Spring Split? Do you guys think Gen G might actually surprise and upset as well? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. The next Team Tier List I'm going to end up doing, I don't think I'll have time to do an LPL one. I'll end up getting an LCS one done as well. Let me see when the LPL starts. No, it's up here, right? The LPL is going to begin. When does the LPL begin? The LPL doesn't begin for quite some time, I think. LPL begins when? Oh, it's not showing me. I just need to know when the LPL is starting because, I mean, I wouldn't want to not talk about the LPL, right? Oh, also for this year, remember, we're going to be going over minor regions too. So we're going to be talking about I know I just spoiled myself, but like the LLA and CB LOL as well. All right, so LPL. The LPL. When is the LPL starting? Let me scroll down here. I have like a lot of games I gotta watch. The LPL starts Monday, January 22nd. So I have about if I want to get it done, I would have to get it done this week. But there's so many players I really don't even know who are gonna be like on these teams, right? But it's all good. I could still probably end up doing it, but if I don't, it might just be better to do it, you know, summer coming this year, but I'll probably have that done. So yeah, see you guys later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Most of all, enjoy. I am MSK, Master Swag King, and I'm signing out, guys. See you guys later. Deuces.